Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Knock Your Socks Off podcast. My name is Hannah.
I'm Ravi.
And Ravi, what are you knocking my socks off with today?
I'd like to start, as I always start these things, with a thought-provoking question, which is, very simply, for you and for our audience,
Okay.
are spoilers, movie spoilers, are they good or are they bad?
Straight up.
Straight up.
That's where we're going, or you want me to answer that
I want you
question
to answer
right
that. Gut reaction, go right now.
now? Can you say it one more time?
Are movie spoilers good. or bad?
Oh, bad.
Okay, I'm going to knock your socks off by proving scientifically that they can actually be a good thing. And here's the double knock your socks off. Usually it's where one of us presents information to the other.
Okay.
In researching this, I completely flipped.
You were on the bad side.
Yes.
You were on the
I was on
spoilers are bad.
Yes, I was on team spoilers are bad. What marketing does, what studios do, what quote influencers do, like all bad.
Okay.
But actually, I'm going to attempt to prove to you and to our audience that spoilers can actually be a good thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know where to go from there, so lead the way.
Let's start with the definition of a spoiler.
Isn't it a car thing?
That's a different type of spoiler, yes.
She's smart.
That is, yes. Typically, the individuals in the 90s and early 2000s would put a spoiler on their vehicle to get more speed. And there is actual aerodynamics involved, but I always looked at it as
All right, fair.
just to pimp out your car.
Pimp My Ride. Remember that show?
Yes, I do. They used to
show.
put spoilers on everything in that show. Like they had minivans,
yeah, exactly.
the whole shebang.
Yeah, G-Wagons.
G-Wagon,
Hummers.
everything.
That was the season and the year of Hummers. I really took us on a tangent.
You did.
Carry on.
I kind of wanted to find if there's like a
Cribs and stuff.
Yeah, like a
Classic
rewatch
MTV.
and everything, but it's only like YouTube rips, I believe. Like no official
Sure.
streaming has it.
Yeah, no.
Anyway, what is a spoiler? A spoiler is an element of a disseminated.
Decimated?
I don't know. What is that?
Disseminated?
Disseminated. A spoiler is an element of a
Disseminated. 'Cause you're
disseminated
disseminating information.
summary or description of a media narrative that reveals significant plot elements with the implication that the experience of discovering the plot naturally as the creator intended it has been robbed of its full effect.
Yes.
It's a very dramatic.
Those are a lot of words to basically explain something is ruined for somebody because they don't get to see it for themselves for the first time.
Yes, truly. I mean, some of the biggest spoilers, and I think we should probably put a preface that this episode will have spoilers for a lot of movies.
Ooh.
But I will promise we will not spoil any film that's come out in 2024 summer. Okay. But things like Star Wars, Harry Potter, we're going to spoil the fuck out of those.
Do you think that, maybe this is something you're going to talk about, but is there a time frame for spoilers? Because also, it is
I'm glad you asked.
Because we don't want to spoil it for the summer, which makes sense. That's an accurate, but it's like, is it spoiling anymore if we're saying, oh, that's right, like in The Force Awakens was basically A New Hope. Like, that's not a spoiler anymore to then reference dated
So typically
by this
the internet came up with a census. This is during the peak, and you're jumping us around as you usually do.
Yes.
The internet came up with a formula. Let's call it a formula.
All right.
During peak Game of Thrones.
Oh.
Game of Thrones really, and I started this out by saying movie spoiler, but obviously it does relate to television shows
and books.
And
listen, when I got books as a kid and we were all reading Harry Potter at the exact same time, there was no it was definitely also, it's just content. I mean, it's just a space where it's like we all were reading that book at the same time.
No,
it's just content. They never specified in that definition that it referred to a film or a certain thing. So carry on.
You know what's amazing? I edit these, so I'm going to take all of that out. I'm going to hide the books.
No, he's not.
Yep, no books.
Wow, Fahrenheit 451 out here. Just
I know that reference because I read that book. Actually,
exactly.
No, I didn't. I actually watched the movie.
You cliff noted that?
No, there was a movie. There's an older movie.
Recent? Oh, not the Michael B. Jordan one?
Not the Michael.
Okay.
Way. There's a super
I
old
see.
movie that I watched, or maybe a short film. Anyway.
Okay.
What was I talking about? Oh yeah, so Game of Thrones during
because you were trying to say spoilers don't only relate to movies; it also relates to TV shows. And I said it also relates to books, and then you. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, peak Game of Thrones period. A formula was created, which was for television shows roughly 3 to 4 weeks after the episode airs. For movies, it is I believe 2 months or 8 weeks.
Okay.
where where you're basically allowed to ruin and spoil things. Now, this was again peak Game of Thrones. This was also, I would say, around
like season like 4 then or something.
Season 4
3
or 5.
or 4. Okay, yeah.
This was also around like peak Marvel movies.
No, yeah,
comic book movies where they all
sure.
had after credit scenes,
For sure.
and those were like heavily, considered like the big spoiler type things and whatnot. And a lot of people, especially on the internet, got very, very upset with the idea that people were going and spoiling. And back then, social media wasn't what it was today. And again, we're talking 2014 to like 2016.
Yeah.
It was more...
Twitter was twittering, that's for sure.
Twitter was twittering.
Yes.
But there was a better handle on Twitter of avoiding spoilers because, fun fact, Twitter wasn't, again, what it is today, where it was as easy to upload video and or photos and or ripping content.
Oh, so are you talking also in this to a spoiler to you is also you're literally filming or showing the content versus... Because to me, a big thing, it was like Twitter... I never watched Game of Thrones, but in the essence of knowing what you're talking about is like, I would know, even though I wasn't watching Game of Thrones, every Sunday night, like my Twitter would be all Game of Thrones discussion.
Right.
So it wasn't really out here being like, this is exactly what happened or here's like what happened. But it was just, people discussing
There were people, or what the internet refers to them as assholes, putting out like big spoilers of Game of Thrones, like Jon Snow died.
Sure.
Or Jon Snow's back from the dead.
Sure.
Ned Stark got beheaded, that type of stuff. But it was all written word. It wasn't visually shown.
I see what you mean. So now you're saying that now Twitter has evolved to...
Not just Twitter, all of social media.
No, I know, but I'm saying to me, Twitter was one of the biggest spoiler, like in the moment things because
it's just there. And there was also no way to kind of avoid seeing it, right? So like if you
I didn't watch the show and I knew it was going to happen
every
exactly
Sunday
what
happened.
night. Yeah.
And a lot of that was also the, quote, journalists.
Oh, for sure.
They would go and say and bring they would spoil the shows and the episodes and then thus get more attention.
Right.
Because I'm a big believer that the internet and social media has killed journalism. There's no such thing anymore. It's all clickbait titles. And in the entertainment journalist world, it's still clickbait titles. What's the best way to get a clickbait title? Spoil something for whoever, So that was kind of like the big start, but that is kind of where the formula came, where it was supposed to be a little bit of a
smaller window for TV and a bigger one for
movies.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure.
Now, while that is all fascinating and interesting, in my research, I kind of asked the question, why? First of all, spoilers. The internet has decided like spoilers inherently are bad, but then it got me questioning as people were questioning why. Why are spoilers bad? So I want to throw the question to you.
Why do I think spoilers are bad?
No. What piece of content have you viewed?
Yeah.
That was spoiled for you? And there has to be. Everybody has at least one or two.
No, I know for sure, but I guess there's not one that's massively coming up for me that felt like it ruined an entire film.
So,
but then it's also since I don't like them, I was also not searching for spoilers.
But nothing's been a really good example is Deadpool 3. It did a big worldwide press tour.
Right.
A lot of people saw it early.
Yeah.
A lot of people were posting video of what they saw.
Yeah.
I saw a couple of things that spoiled that film for me, which I will not repeat because I respect the formula. But you haven't come across that ever in your time on the internet?
No, I have, but it's I would just avoid, I would fly past it to the best of my ability and not sit and wait for what are they going to say? Or
Gotcha. You would just, if you're kind of see it, you just jump away quickly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you're one of the lucky ones.
I am.
One of the interesting examples that I came across was this idea that while something may be spoiled for you, doesn't necessarily stop you from seeing it. And the best example out in the entire world of content since the beginning of cinema, Star Wars. Everybody knows, for whatever reason, when you're born, that Vader is Luke's father. That knowing that when you first see that film doesn't ruin the film. You know it's coming at some point. But does that ruin the film for you?
Do you remember when you didn't know it?
I've always known it. I've never not known it.
Right.
I don't ever know a moment when I didn't know it.
Right, but that's because you also saw Star Wars when you were really young.
Or the parents talked about it. or people at school may have talked about it, but is something that like I core belief knew. And I still went and saw Star Wars, and I still watch Star Wars, and I still enjoy it. So knowing that spoiler didn't necessarily take away from the movie experience.
But in a sense, it's no longer a spoiler.
Sure.
When you're talking about a movie that was out in the 70s and that you saw in the 90s.
80s.
So you saw it when you were below 1 year old?
I imagine my parents had it on.
Excuse me, I'm trying. So it's like the space of like, so even if they had it on, then it wasn't spoiled because you got to watch it originally. They weren't telling you like, Ravi, he's actually his father. We're only watching it when Obi-Wan's about to die. But guess what? He's
knew
like,
since before birth.
But that's 20 years after. So like,
sure.
But like in the essence of like, we didn't know. Like if Anakin was going to win the pod race, necessarily, we obviously knew he was going to not die in Phantom Menace. But it's like, is it? But like, per your statistics, is it a spoiler anymore for kids who didn't see the movie when in the 70s that Empire Strikes Back is a spoiler or not?
Yes. Based on like the definition, you're taking away a major plot point.
Right, but you're just saying that the timeline doesn't add up, that it's a spoiler
No,
anymore.
that's the formula of what we give when you can talk about it, not what's classified as a spoiler. A spoiler is still classified as a spoiler regardless of time. It's when the internet allows and it's deemed okay to talk about whatever publicly on the internet. Then that's that formula.
Right.
It's two different things. Yeah.
I'm
just saying.
But it's kind of the space of like, yes, it doesn't stop people from seeing stuff. And if anything, like, like spoilers, if you're going to go see a movie already, you're going to go see it. Like, and you're going to partake in watching a show or whatnot. Like that is going to happen. But in the same breath, like, that's just where I'm like, I just like, don't know if it's like just basically pop culture like knowledge now that like Vader is Luke's father, or if that's actually a spoiler for a 6-year-old who hasn't seen it, and he's like, don't tell, like you can't put your kid in the world and tell him like, oh, we aren't sure like if Frodo like protects the ring or not, or like if Vader is who Vader is related to Luke Skywalker. But it's like but my brain's just kind of like, are those now just widely regarded as like public pop culture knowledge?
Based on the definition of what spoiler means, they are still spoilers. It's the time thing is strictly when you're allowed to discuss it on the World Wide Web. Right.
Okay. Anyway, we'll move on from that. I think we're both getting caught up in the technicalities of it. I get what you're talking about. I'm just saying, like, I'm not walking around. I have friends with kids, right? And so, like, I'm not trying to walk around and be like, I can't tell these kids certain things about really famous content pieces because.
But that's the thing. That's the point I'm trying to prove. Where you can, and it's okay to do that. Especially with kids, like who cares? They're kids. But you're saying it's a spoiler. It is a spoiler. And it's okay to spoil things.
Oh, I see. Because I'm saying spoilers are bad.
Right, and I'm saying spoilers are good. And it's okay to spoil things for people. Because guess what? People are still going to go see it.
Right.
Because, so the research that was done.
For the sake of current things coming out.
Everything.
Right. Okay.
Everything.
But I don't think that makes the spoiler good or bad. Like, what do you mean? Do you mean like spoiler is helpful that the movie's still going to be seen, or spoiler is good because it makes you more compelled to see the movie or something? Like, maybe this is a better clarifying question.
We're going to get to the study that was done. Spoiler.
Spoiler alert. But it's the space of like, what do you, so like, I guess, yeah, what do you mean by you think spoilers are good? Because what I think when I say spoilers are bad, it takes away from, kind of the definition of like, it takes away from the organic moment of discovering something for yourself and being able to essentially without influence from somebody else's POV on something, being able to interact and learn a piece of the storyline. And so that you can like have that like you ever like think of like things where you're like, I wish I could go back and see that thing for the first time again.
No.
Oh Lord. Okay, so like I have many times where it's like I wish I could go back to the time that I read different books as a kid for the first time ever, and it was like so epic. Like when I've read the first like Chronicles of Narnia, it was so epic, right? Like it was like super cool. Did you cry
when the lion died? Spoiler.
Yes. Exactly.
Then it came back. Spoiler.
Yeah, Jesus. Just kidding.
Jesus lied.
you can go back and think like, man, the times where I didn't know a piece of information and then I knew it and how that like clicked it.
Nope.
Anyway, so well, I don't know where we got with this. Go ahead. Where's the next thing?
Anyway, so the study
that's what I think is like,
Sure.
that's why I think spoilers are bad, is not because it keeps me from engaging with the content but it's like, it's that moment of like personal growth. I mean, we've talked on different pods about like the value of stories, right? And how stories allow you to interact with something in a unique way. It allows you to process things maybe you've been processing in your life, but it's a safer space to process than your real life or your interactions with something. And you get to see a character go through a bunch of things that they get on to the other side of, and you kind of get to see that in like a bite-sized thing versus like our lives are like continually like we're figuring things out and like living our life going forward.
Sure.
And so the value of like being able to, again, with as little influence as the outside world can give you, being able to go through that process with the main character or the hero of your story or the, or the villain of your story, all these things, like you need to like being able to do that without as much impact or influence on how somebody else perceives it. Because also to me, the minute you see a spoiler or get a spoiler, you're also getting someone else's interaction with the piece of thing. And you're then like bending towards like what they also think about that piece of storyline versus you just getting to solely go forward in the story. And that is why I think spoilers are bad.
Anywho, so a study was.
You can't say why you think they're
good.
Me
finish, I can like. Jeez. So Collider.
This is a knock your socks off.
Collider did in collaboration with a researcher.
Okay.
They did a test on about 10 participants. This is back in 2023 around spoilers and kind of
it's recent.
Exactly what you were talking about, like the experience of seeing the movie. In the study, they realized out of the 10 people, 8 of them, even though things were spoiled for them, still enjoyed and found value in seeing the film, specifically because they knew a twist was coming and because they no longer had to sit there and figure out what the twist was or what the big reveal was. They could pay more attention to what was actually happening in the film, in other scenes, characters, and that type of stuff. This example also goes on to show why a lot of Marvel films have no substance, because a lot of them are built upon the after credit scene and or the idea that the movie is a trailer or a commercial for the next movie.
Right. Okay.
When you remove the spoiler, right, or the big reveal or whatever, there's not a lot to hold up to, right? If Marvel wants to really fix their problem, go into a movie without the idea of what is the big reveal, what is the whatever, and focus on actually making a fucking movie and a story, and it'll be a better thing.
Okay.
So, again, spoilers also kind of help weeding out what is a good film and a bad film. Because if the entire film is built upon the big reveal or whatever that is given... AKA, you're not talking about a plot line. You're talking about a cameo or... I mean, it can be a plot Another
line,
great example,
twist,
The Sixth Sense, right? The Sixth Sense, the big twist, obviously, again, spoiler, the big twist, Bruce Willis was dead the entire time. Yeah. Even though you know that, and you go, like, even the first time you see it, yes, it's a great experience, whatever. But then the second, the third time that you go and you see the film, because it's done in such a well-crafted way, you pick up on a lot more things.
Yeah, no, for sure. I get that. I get that.
I also
but you don't remember the time when you didn't know the twist of The Sixth Sense?
No, I do remember that.
And wasn't it crazy?
It was crazy.
And then you go back and you watch it, and there's a new information.
That sounds like
to
a
be
high
said.
that you're chasing.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a great thing.
But
I love it.
why you don't need the same movie over and over again, or the same, like, wanting to go back and not remember that? That's the beauty of, like, new ideas, new stories coming out. Right, but somebody who was like 9 or 10 when they saw The Sixth Sense could take that and be like, how do I create my own crazy thriller, when I'm in 20s or whatever, and take upon that, build upon it.
Right.
Yeah.
So the spoiler is being able to see the movie without being spoiled is valuable because you get to have that full.
There's definitely value.
Okay, so you're not saying you're not saying it's so solely bad or good. You're saying there is a mix, but you're saying it's not as bad as like it's not just bad.
No.
Okay.
It's definitely a fine line, and we will get to the point where I think we'll both agree on where spoilers do fall into like the place of the bad, and that's kind of where this next section. So the main thing I'm trying to get a point across to you.
If people did not enjoy something,
right?
Fair.
Right.
That's fair.
Spoilers
that's fair.
definitely help, I think, enhance the story if the story is done well.
Okay.
Like, again, The Sixth Sense, Star Wars Episode 5.
Sure.
Spoilers like I'm trying to think of a good Marvel big twist. Marvel doesn't really have spoilers. They have reveals of like what character shows up.
But like The Usual Suspects.
Yeah.
Buster Posey. Buster Chose. No, God, fucking. You know that one where it's all. No. Have you never seen The Usual Suspects?
I have, but I don't know the.
You don't know the twist?
No. Oh, there we go.
I'm not telling you the
okay,
twist
because
I clearly think.
Good. Don't do that.
I won't.
But what's interesting with like spoilers again is like it's become also a major marketing tool, like a massive marketing tool to kind of help push whatever. Yes. But then what is interesting as I kind of research this more is that and I think you and I are included in this we are confused between spoiler and cameo reveal.
Sure.
You know, the big one obviously is Deadpool again. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not going to say anything, but that is a really good example where things were released or announced at certain conventions that aren't actually technically, when you look at the definition, they are not spoilers. Sure. They are just the big reveals or whatever.
Sure.
So in that sense, that is okay. I think what's interesting with spoilers, though, is when you let the marketing kind of go to your head. And then you ruin the film for individuals via this thing called merchandise. So when I was searching for all this stuff, there is a subreddit thread of films that were ruined by merchandise.
Love it.
And I thought it was quite fascinating for the things that were ruined.
Okay.
And I can safely say I don't think any of this was
ruined for you.
Ruined for me.
Okay.
The number one post or comment on this thread. One of the tracks on the official soundtrack for The Phantom Menace. So the soundtrack was released before the film came out, and the title of the thing was Qui-Gon's Noble End.
Oh, yeah.
So if you'd gotten the soundtrack, his entire death was known to you before.
You're like holding your CD because those are the CD times of CDs, and you just like flip it over, and you're like, cool.
Yeah, and to me,
end.
and let's add that's a spoiler.
That's a fucking spoiler because every time you and I even in these things have been talking about spoilers, right? I don't think we've never talked about a cameo being what's fucked it up for us or something. It's always it's the big hits of like I see dead people or like all the things where
I'm
it's
your
like
father.
Right, like it's the literal plot points like those that makes it a spoiler. Versus like, oh, did you know that James Earl Jones is actually the voice of Darth Vader and not somebody else? You know, like it's like that. It's like Mufasa and Darth Vader are the same. Like it's crazy. You know, it's like it's this stuff of like that's right. It's like those, but like that's a huge spoiler. That's a big important plot moment in
this one's this is the second most liked or whatever. Frozen's plot twist was noticed because of the dolls. Mattel and Disney both sell dolls featuring characters from the Disney films, but Mattel refuses to sell villain dolls. The Disney store branded sells Ursula or Maleficent and such, but not Mattel since there wouldn't be enough demand. Cue people noticing that Prince Hans was not in the Mattel line. Fascinating. I mean, that's a deep dive.
It's a deep dive, which is actually really smart. But it's the funny spoiler though. Of like you can watch a movie and know that if someone's not using an Apple phone, they're probably the villain.
An Apple phone?
Have you never heard this?
No, I've never heard this. This is fascinating. I didn't know that was a thing. Wait, only good guys?
I'm actually really concerned. I'm sorry that I got really loud. You've never heard of the theory that only good guys use Apple phones? No.
I've never seen that. Can you give me an example? I guess all of Marvel, they use Apple.
But that's bad guys aren't using an Apple phone. I mean, anything, even.
I'm trying to think of movies.
I mean, I'm about to for some reason reference Severance, but that wouldn't work because it's on Apple Plus, so they all use Apple. But like, it's very, very much known that if you're a villain, you're not using an Apple product.
You're using an Android, Samsung?
Yes.
That's fascinating.
Or they're clearly covering up Apple on their phone. Like, but if you're a hero, you're going to be. You've never heard that? Wow, I feel so alive.
Never heard that.
But it's also a classic one, which is it felt kind of deep cut like that for the sake of Mattel's not going to sell villain, which is fascinating.
Shrek toys from Burger King had an ogre version of Fiona.
Oh no,
that's pretty fucked up.
That's a big one, and that's like your kids were watching Shrek. I was watching Shrek. I was a kid at that time, so
the first one came out was like early
shout out to Shrek
2000s.
Shout out to Shrek 5 coming.
No. let it be done. We don't need more Shrek.
Oh no, I don't think I saw past 2. So
I definitely didn't.
So
you could remove the hood from the action figure of the Phantasm from the animated Batman film Mask of the Phantasm, which revealed that the Phantasm was actually Bruce Wayne's old girlfriend, Andrea Beaumont. So you get and that entire thing is based upon this character.
Didn't know who they
you didn't
were.
know who it was. That's a pretty big one. Like
That's a
I would be
huge one.
super pissed.
Dang. Yeah.
What was the other one? This is a more recent one.
Okay.
The marketing for the Star Wars The Force Awakens obscured who would be the new Jedi, with the main trailer
classic.
showing the shot of Finn raising Luke's lightsaber and getting ready to fight as a red herring.
Yeah.
A kid's toy commercial had the girl dressed as Rey force push stormtroopers, spoiling the reveal.
Ah, there you go.
So like
Unfortunately, there was a lot of
a lot of
negative
these,
things around Force Awakens.
What's interesting is, and maybe this is like just the way that the toy industry is, because there's so many being produced so quickly, is like I feel like a lot of it's primarily the toy stuff where stuff gets kind of pushed through without people, I think, realizing.
Sure.
And again, like that can be a good thing, that could be a bad thing.
Yeah.
I would imagine most people would miss that. I would think.
Yeah,
Maybe?
I would think. I mean, like in the essence of, I haven't heard of those things aside from the Apple phone thing. Is that like that's a pretty deep cut, but it's also what I think is like kind of heartbreaking in that is the people who are going to find the deep cut ones are very passionate about those stories, and so like they're the ones who are also going to super care about not getting something spoiled. Maybe ideally for themselves, and so then them being the ones that actually do get it spoiled because of those things. That's like really sad to me. But
this one's, I think, the last one on this list that I think is fascinating. Planet of the Apes. So there's the in the original Planet of the
not
Apes.
these Kingdom ones or whatever.
No,
but okay.
the original with Charleston.
Oh, not even with Andy Serkis, you mean?
No.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
OG.
Okay, sorry.
One.
Yes. Okay.
The DVD box for Planet of the Apes shows the film's climactic image. So when Charleston Heston is on the beach and there's the Statue of Liberty, that's on the box set.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. Which again, like to your point of like, how long can you?
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
I mean, that is one of those ones where it's like, I don't know. I don't know if this is an example that would ever come up, but like you're in college or high school and your teacher's showing you classic films.
Sure.
You happen to see the DVD.
Sure.
That could ruin that big moment, because that big moment, again, that to me is definitely a spoiler because it's very integral to the story of Planet of the Apes, and it makes it so much more impactful. So
yeah,
definitely a spoiler.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, to kind of wrap this up, I do agree some spoilers are bad.
Okay.
And I'll take a quote from you earlier when you were talking, when I was asking, you know, like how spoilers are presented.
Okay.
And I think that is a very good point, because spoilers, again, with the idea of journalists talking about whatever cameo or reveal or the big thing, yes, there is kind of a discussion to be had, right? Like there are tons of articles talking in depth about the Sixth Sense and Bruce Willis's big reveal and all of that. And again, like, yes, if you, for whatever reason, decide to read an article about that before you go and see the film, 100%, I think it will definitely kind of warp your view and experience that the first time. I think where spoilers have kind of gone completely out of control is today's modern influencer on social media.
Okay.
Typically, like, and I said this at the beginning with journalism and entertainment journalism, it's like you throw clickbait things up there. Of
course.
And influencers are doing that now all the time. They get invited
100%.
to screenings and then they just show whatever, right? And just ruin it. Not because they're adding anything. They don't add anything. They're literally just recording it and putting it up so that you get clicks, views, and engagement. And that, I think, is, yes, 1,000% bad. I think where it would be okay is if you were having a discussion.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, again, if you follow the golden rule of, 3-4 weeks to 6 to 8 weeks for movies or whatever, and then have a discussion around it and show it, I think that's great. I think that's okay to do.
Yeah.
But I think what we're seeing, where it's like a movie hasn't even come out yet, and it's just being thrown out, that part is definitely bad.
Now, what is your take on, because I think I agree, I mean, I've agreed from the top that I don't think spoilers are the best things, but the notion of if an influencer or anybody or, production company, whatever, like does put out essentially like spoiler warning and then proceeds to put out something that is a spoiler, And so that person who is watching the thing has to choose. Like I was kind of saying, where it's like I can't remember a time that I was like massively spoiled by something, but I definitely have experienced spoiler. Like I've experienced a spoiler content piece before I've seen something, but then I have to be the person to choose to scroll away versus just kind of like, you know, like, oh, let me just like actually just watch it. Like, fuck it, I'm just gonna watch it. Like, so where's the line of like an influencer could put something out that does say, hey, spoiler warning, and if you're choosing to watch this, that's on you. Like, what's your thought on that?
I think it goes back to the content usage rules.
Okay.
So if we take like YouTube as the example, if like I shoot a film and I put it out in theaters and then you just straight up take a 5-minute clip of my film, put it on YouTube, and you don't do any kind of
like
transformative whatever, that's illegal.
Sure.
That's just content stealing.
Yeah.
I think that's the same, even if you put a spoiler warning up and then you just show 5 minutes of the film, unless you're transforming it or you're adding any editorial value, fuck off.
Yeah.
Very simple.
Yeah. But like as the viewer of those things, do you think it's the person's responsibility to scroll away, or you think that it like fuck the influencer for putting it up at all?
Fuck the influencer for putting it up.
Because you think it's bad.
I think that piece is bad. Yeah, I think that piece is bad.
Okay. All right.
I think that piece is bad. But again, it's also if you are transforming it and you're having a conversation.
Sure.
And I'm just giving a generic example. I don't think this is in film anywhere. Captain America shows up at the end of Thor 15, and it's revealed that he's actually been Thor's father the entire time, and now we're having a discussion. So that's, you know,
what happens.
This is a spoiler warning. They show that, and then they're asking questions based on things that they picked up. I think that's A-okay.
Okay.
And I also think that's A-okay, like if you see that before you go see the film, because you know that's coming,
right?
And now you have the advantage of like a second viewing, almost your first time,
sure,
where you're gonna pick up probably a lot more,
sure.
So I think that's fine,
right?
But it's just straight up when you're like, spoiler, here's the thing, the end.
Yeah.
Then it's just like, well, that's stupid.
Yeah. Now, granted, the movie makers don't want things to be spoiled because they'd rather, obviously, you see the movie the first time, get the experience you have, and then see it a second time and enjoy it with the new fresh eyes.
Yeah.
Right? So like we know why the theater obviously there's also controversy of like leaks and stuff happen from studios themselves. But the space of like ideally, yes, you're getting to see something with fresh eyes or not, you know, be so involved in like, oh my gosh, like where's the twist gonna be? Like I'm not sure, like so that way you can focus on the plot. But it's also like the space of like that's the whole point of seeing something multiple times. And if it's a good enough movie, you want to see it multiple times.
Right.
And so to me that like I get the idea of like if someone can add something to a piece of spoiler content as being, you know, in a sense like less annoying than if it's just, you know, spoiler for spoiler's sake or spoiler for clout, you know. But yeah.
I think what's also interesting with leaks, spoilers and things, you have obviously Feige, big head of Marvel and everything, and they've over the years they've had leaks. The leaks have like shifted their releases even. Feige is, when they were doing the press for Deadpool and Wolverine, basically said like it's impossible to think going into a production that something won't be leaked.
Right.
And he has kind of, I think he's matured maybe, where it's like, yeah, we need to just make good films.
Right.
If a leak is put out there or spoilers dropped out there and that actually hurts the film, then the film wasn't going to be good anyway. And it's like I think that's a very good normal way to like kind of look into it,
right? As
opposed to this like weird joking but true thing of like, you know, if you ruin something, will destroy your whole family.
True.
Which is very scary because it's like it's a movie.
It's a movie.
Chill.
It's fine, you know, and it's gonna be okay. Yeah. No, for sure.
Well, that's going to do it. I'm glad I was able to convince you that spoilers are good.
You didn't.
I did.
You didn't.
I think I did a little
so
bit.
Where do you, so even in this conversation, do you still land on like spoilers? So you're not saying spoilers are 100% good. You're saying that there's
a space for them. I think there's a space for them. I think that we need to also at the same time recognize that how we go about trying to get engagement on the internet, I think it's a bigger issue. How we get engagement on the internet needs to kind of change. Where it's like if you look at the news, The news realized a long time ago when they broadcast tragedy,
Sure.
they get more ad dollars.
Okay.
They get more eyes on their thing.
Yeah.
And then ever since they kind of realized that, they've sneakily just been kind of doing more shock value and whatever. Social media is now at the same space as the news, where it's individual creators or people that want attention on the internet are realizing they need to do more shocking things.
Sure.
And in the entertainment space, the shocking thing to do is to ruin the whole movie.
Sure.
So I think that the real thing is like, yes, spoilers are okay in certain places. I think it's that we just need to kind of reassess how spoilers are put on the internet and have like better moderation for them or control.
What do you think about, like, because I have some people who are so against spoiling things that they don't even watch trailers for something. They want to go in like so cold, if you will, to a piece of content. Like, what is your thought on, like, you know, you were talking about in the essence of like conventions, you know, or this recent summer one, like, you know, potentially spoiling, but just like really just speaking to the cameos in Deadpool or something. But it's also like, they also talked about a lot of future content. And so like, where do you stand on like that's like, that's not, it's obviously not spoiling something.
Sure.
Because again, kind of like what we did kind of come to a consensus on is that spoiling like big plot points rather than spoiling who's acting in something, what story is coming or whatever. But like, what is your thought kind of on, because there is a big culture right now of like garnering a lot of hype for something based on who's involved or what's coming up. Like, what are kind of like, where do you think on the spoiler scale, is that like really spoilery, or is that, and that's smart, or is it like kind of?
You're talking specifically trailers,
and then also the big conventions where they're announcing what's coming, and they're kind of crafting the narrative.
Yeah. So
like,
two thoughts there. Conventions are glorified keynotes.
Yeah.
They do those things like Robert Downey Jr. being announced. It's not spoiling anything because, let's be honest, a year ago, they were saying something completely different about Avengers 5. It is the same way that Apple's like, here's the new iPhone, whatever the hell, and it has a built-in bidet. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then come release, the bidet's not working until 2 versions later. It's the same idea. It is to garner interest and hype within the company.
And grow stock.
And keep investors happy, that type of thing. So there's that. Trailers, their whole purpose is to get you or get new people interested in seeing the film. If you're an individual that's like, the new M. Night Shyamalan, a ding-long film, Trap, I'm going to see that because I just like everything M. Night. I totally respect and understand why you wouldn't want to see any of the other trailers. I don't think there's like a good or bad there. I think it makes sense because this is factual. Modern day trailers tell too much of a story, but they have to because their purpose is to get butts and seats. Right. So it's one of those things where you as a marketing team are looking at the film and you're crafting and looking at it and thinking, like, what can we show or do to get somebody who is on the edge of their seat to actually go and sit and see this film? One of the biggest critiques, if you will, of like the trailer rollout for Deadpool and Wolverine was X-23.
Right, in the final trailer,
A lot of people were like, you didn't need to put that there. It would have still gotten people hyped and whatever. Yeah. And again, it was one of those things where it's like, they did it because they're trying to go after the, like, if there's 100 people, they already know 80 people are going to go see it. Sure. They're trying to get that other 20 people in there. And that's like why modern day trailers, unfortunately, they just tell too much. Yeah. But it doesn't turn you off from them. No. Or like, only if the trailer like shows too much. If it officially does. Yeah. And you're kind of saying, again, you would kind of be speaking to like plot line rather than like cameos or who's in something. Plot lines and or like if it's an action film, for example, you know, like I don't want to see all the action sequences in like little snippets in the trailer, and then when the movie comes, I'm like, oh yeah, that's all of it. Right. Gladiator 2, like the first trailer came out, I'm sold off of that. I don't need to see the second or the final or whatever other trailers come out. I don't need to see all the presser stuff that they're going to be doing. Like I'm already going to go. Right. So they did their job with the first trailer. Yeah. Again, it's where it's like you have to almost kind of spoil your film sometimes in order to get the amount of individuals you want in theaters, which kind of, it sucks. It's sad.
It is.
And it's because it's like, it's also an attention thing. Like we don't have the attention span that we used to. And that's a proven thing.
Right.
That's why there's like 50,000 press interviews with Hugh and Ryan is because it needs to be in your brainwave, 24/7.
And then what I think is tough about that especially is like, there was probably like, even in, I guess, using the example of Gladiator is like you and many other people are probably all kind of not no matter how that trailer was released or how, like what it was included, but like there was probably a good enough number of people because it is a sequel or because it is part of a franchise that we're already pumped about that one and going to go see it or they're going to kind of already have that. Whereas like what I think is really tough is like new original content, new original films, new original TV shows, just have it. It's like they have one notch down because like, because you're already kind of watching the Gladiator trailer with the knowledge of like your early interactions with Gladiator 1 or whatever, you know what I mean, or something, and so you're already kind of like on this like trail, whereas like and so but like then a trailer for like a really a new show or a new like piece film, the trailers like kind of have to show so much because they need you to get. Because they don't already have the like we already have you invested in this thing because Ridley Scott's back or whatever. It's like this like they're just trying to get on the ground floor, but then they end up showing a bunch, and then you're like, oh, like I mean even Acolyte had a lot of like trailers that like ended up kind of being like, well, like I don't even know what the show's about for like for the sake of like because we like even though they were already in a world that we knew like it was going such like into original spaces that like the trailers were also just like tough or got pretty highly critiqued because of like people didn't know where that was coming from. And I think that is like a tricky part where it's like, I don't know if it's spoiling things, but like, yeah, like I think that's just where it's a tough spot where when you're already coming into like being a sequel or being in a franchise IP, like you already kind of have the leg up. And so they got to go even crazier. And then it just creates like a really weird trailer culture, I think, where then like, I kind of sometimes understand when I have some friends who are so against trailers. 'Cause it's like, well, if you're going to go see the film, then go see the film or whatever. But.
True, but then also the trailers also help let you know if that's a film that you actually need to see in theaters or especially when it's like new IP or new concepts or ideas or whatever.
Yeah.
The new Alien Romulus film. I think the newest trailer that came out, which I did watch, does a terrible job of kind of taking all the scare factor out of it. Oh. Like I could probably guess based on like we've seen Alien before. It's not like a new concept here. Yeah. But like based on the trailer and seeing previous films, I could probably figure out in the film where we'll get chest bursts, which kind of takes away from that scare factor, which is kind of like, well, I mean, I'm still gonna go see it. I'm probably 1,000% still gonna jump like crazy.
Sure.
But it is like it's one of those ones where again they had to do it because the last Alien thing was Prometheus. Was it Prometheus? Or Alien Covenant was the last one with Michael Fassbender, and that came out I think in like 16 or 17, like 7 years ago. Yeah. Like at this point, you have an entire new generation of kids that are of age to go see a rated R film. Yeah. So now you've got to like try and get them wrangled up and to go. So yeah, it makes sense why they're showing so much.
Yeah. So you still sit. So okay. So like what in the essence of like not being 100% good or 100% bad, like what's your percentage of like you think it's percentage good, percentage bad of not trailers, of spoilers?
I think it's 50-50.
Oh, you're at 50-50.
I think you've converted me back to 50-50, which is annoying. And you're at 50-50 now too, right?
No, I'm at least 60-40.
Well, thanks for joining us here on the podcast.
60-40, it's bad. I get
60-40, that's not as bad.
I think I see what you mean for the sake of like, not that I think spoilers are good, but I think that spoilers aren't as like deteriorating of a piece of content as my brain is like, if you know anything, then it's a spoiler, where it's like, and like I watch trailers, so it's like, I'm not saying that I'm not the person that doesn't watch a trailer, but like that space where it's like, my brain at the beginning of this was like, oh no, I'm pretty much like 99%, if not 100%, like spoilers are bad. Now, granted, I'm definitely still in that camp, but I think I see what you mean for the sake of like, oh yeah, if it's a cameo reference, if it's like, kind of like these big nugget pieces, and or that space where kind of when we were saying at the beginning, kind of like with the time frame of it all too, is like, if somebody doesn't know a thing by a certain point, like I'm not going to hang my hat and be like, I can't tell you like if Voldemort lives or dies, it's like, I'm going to like, because if I was in 100% spoilers are bad, then I would talk about nothing that I enjoy, if you will, with anybody who I think hasn't seen a certain thing.
Right.
You know, so it's like, so I clearly am not all the way there. Like, so that's where I'm like, okay, I think I can see.
You're like the studio where you're trying to sell it. So you have to like give sprinkles.
I gotta give sprinkles, or it's like, or I have to just like not care. And if like someone, you know, I'm not gonna be so secretive that like, oh my gosh, if I'm in line for bagels and like I can't talk about like, oh my gosh, like this one thing that happened 5 years ago in, you know, the first season of a whatever show. Like it's like this space of like, I'm not gonna try and like hold my tongue because I'm trying to keep every spoiler for everybody in the world. It's like, no, I totally. Yeah.
And that again though, but you talking about sports with people gets people to go see whatever because you're encouraging
about it
and you're sparking interest in whatever.
So so it's like I get what you mean, but I'm still for sure on the bad camp. But
that's gonna do it for us here on Knock Your Socks Off.
Yeah.
The podcast. As always, you can find us on social media at KYSO Podcast on TikTok and on YouTube, youtube.com, KYSO Podcast. New pods every Saturday, and I will end it with I won, I win, and suck it, Hannah.
Keep the spoilers to yourself.